Wassalamu alaikum, peace be on all of you. I'm really knocked out by this meeting, I must say, by the Loch Lees meeting was a great meeting. But if Jerry will forgive me, this is an even greater meeting. Both in its size, not only is it standing room only, they're actually outside of the room listening to this meeting, but its spread of ages and colours, and it's a fantastic picture of what Bristol looks like, what Britain looks like, what we're glad Britain looks like. I said on the radio earlier today that the reason that we were coming here to Easton was because we believe in a multicultural Britain, and this is a multicultural community. But not only do we believe in it, we're glad that it's happened. I am old enough to have been born into a Britain that was all white, where your Saturday night out was fish and chips, where Billy Fury was the best thing you could listen to on the radio. Billy was good, but he was limited. He was limited. And not only do we recognize this multicultural mosaic which Bristol is, which Britain is, we think Britain's much better that way. So my first task is to thank my comrades who've organized this magnificent meeting, because these meetings don't come out of thin air. You don't just bring a speaker who's known and everyone turns up. A great deal of work has gone into this meeting tonight, and I congratulate them on the success for their labours. The good news is that we don't have to have a collection for the £19,000 that Mo was going to be fined. The bad news is you've to all pick up a bag as you leave, because there's a street down there. No, seriously, the contributions that my friends have made my job much easier. They have set the scene for what it is I want to say this evening. But first I have to explain my makeup, because I wouldn't like you to think I habitually go around the streets of Bristol wearing makeup. But this has been such a remarkable day that I only remembered about half an hour ago that I've got makeup on. I was on Sky News this morning, Al Jazeera television at lunchtime, and there are some people in the room who saw both, which tells you something about the character of the meeting. And I've done 4 or 5 radio interviews today with Bristol radios. As I say, I left the second TV studio in such a hurry to jump in the car and drive here that I forgot I still had makeup on, so please forgive me. It's not an affectation. I don't regard myself as an actor. It's not the roar of the grease paint, the smell of the crowd, and so on. It's much more prosaic than that. But why has it been such a remarkable day? Why have so many television and radio outlets wanted to interview the MP for a party which has 1 MP? Why have so many people come here tonight, when if New Labour held a public meeting in Easton, there'd be more people outside shouting abuse than would be inside? Why is it that my TalkSport radio shows 2 years ago had 80,000 listeners and now have 880,000 listeners? Why is that? It's not because I'm quite good at what I do. I am quite good at what I do, or you wouldn't be here. It's much more important than that. It's because what we are saying actually strikes a chord with a huge number of people in this country, and we're the only people saying it. Isn't that the real reason? One of the Bristol radios asked me what we stood for. I said it's really quite simple. Every country needs a Labour Party. What do I mean by a Labour Party? I mean a party that will stand up for the interests of those people who have nothing to sell except their work. Who, if they didn't get wages this week or a salary this month, would have nothing else to live on. No savings, no shares that they could sell, no investments, no lands, no properties that they rent out to other people, only their own labour. Such a group of people, or class of people as they used to say in the old days, has distinct interests that are different from the interests of the people who employ them. That ought to be obvious, indeed once was obvious. That's why the Labour Party in Britain was formed. It was formed because at that time, working people who had only recently been enfranchised, and only then male working people, was some decades later that women were allowed the privilege of the vote, and only after a bitter struggle and dispute. Working people who had a vote voted for the Liberals because they weren't Tories. And there were people said that that's what should continue to happen. But one man, Keir Hardie, a Scotsman, Wendy from Ayrshire, that's Wendy that came all the way from Scotland to hear my friend speaking. She'd heard me often enough in my previous life. Keir Hardie argued, no, working people deserve and need a party of their own. The Liberals represent the owners, the factory owners, the bankers, the newly commercial class, everyone actually except the old aristocracy who were represented by the Tories. But the interests of the owners were different from the interests of the workers. Of course they must be. So Keir Hardie argued that we needed a party of labour, a party of working people that would have no other master except the interests of working people. People said, no, you'll split the vote, you'll let the Tories in. Keir Hardie argued that the Liberals and the Tories were essentially the same, at least in the respect that they did not represent the interests of the working people. And so he stood and won. The very first ever Labour seat, he was one Labour MP in the East End of London, as it happened in East Ham in 1894. And from that breakthrough, from that little acorn, a mighty oak grew, and remarkably quickly, over something like 30 years. In historical terms, not a long time, when the first Labour government was formed. And I believe, not everyone does, that most of the things that happened in the 20th century for working people happened because of Labour. That's not to say all the good things that should have been done were done. They were not. That's not to say that everything Labour did was good. It was not. But nonetheless, the development of council housing, the development of welfare, the development of a free national health service, the development of free education, so that the children of working people could go to universities, even though in too few numbers, the very greatest universities in the land. Trade union rights, rights for women, rights for children, the development of nursery education and so on. These things were all the result of Labour power in Parliament, in councils, in trade unions. That's why I spent 36 years of my life in the Labour Party. That's why millions of working people gave their votes almost on a tribal basis. My father was Labour. My grandfather was Labour, therefore I'm Labour. That was the picture for most of the 20th century. But we've reached a stage where Britain no longer has a Labour Party.